Tomorrow night, across Sweden, the fires will be lit in city parks and on hilltops, in university towns and tiny villages. People will gather. They'll wrap themselves in jackets and scarves. It's still cold. It's always still cold on the last night of April. And they'll watch the flames climb into the dark. They'll sing, they'll drink something warm from their thermos, they'll stomp their feet against the chill, and they'll be doing something that Swedes have done for over 1,000 years, burning the winter away. The Swedish author Selma Lagerlöf, who was also the first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature, once wrote about this night. In her beloved children's book, The Wonderful Adventures of Niels, she described the Walpurgis bonfire as a beacon of light and warmth, a gathering point for all creatures, where even the wild animals crept closer to feel the heat and remember that spring was coming. She wrote, "It was a great bonfire lit on the top of a mountain, and it blazed so high that it could be seen for miles around." That is what tomorrow night is, a beacon, a signal, a reminder. This is Valborg, or Valborgsmässoafton, and in English, Walpurgis or Walpurgis Night, the Spring Fire Festival, a night of pagan ghosts, medieval saints, student chaos, and an English-born abbess who became a Frankish saint and probably never imagined she'd end up here. Welcome to a special bonus episode released a day early so that when you stand before the flames tomorrow evening, you'll know exactly what you're part of. Long before anyone in Sweden had heard of St. Valpurga, long before there was a Sweden at all, people were lighting fires on this night. We don't know exactly what they called it. The pre Christian people of Scandinavia didn't leave us written records, but we can piece together through enough archaeology, from folklore, from later medieval accounts to know what was happening. And the picture that emerges is one of danger, transition, of a world that felt very thin. Late April in northern Sweden is a liminal time. The snow is mostly gone, though patches still linger in the shadows of the forest. The ground is beginning to thaw, releasing the scent of wet earth and last year's fallen leaves. The days are getting longer, fast now, racing toward the endless light of midsummer. But the nights are still cold. The trees are still somewhat bare. Their branches look black against the sky. And the old winter spirits, the witches, the Vetar, the invisible beings that inhabited the landscape of Norse belief, they were said to be especially active this time of year. In Swedish folklore, the night before May Day was one of the most dangerous nights of the calendar. The boundary between the living and the dead, between the natural and the supernatural, was said to be thin, almost transparent. On this night, witches were believed to fly on broomsticks and sometimes on farm animals or even on sleeping men to a mythical mountain called Blåkulla. There, in a great hall lit by candles that burned black, they would feast and dance with the devil himself. This wasn't a children's story. This wasn't a fairy tale told to scare kids into behaving. This was something people genuinely feared. The idea that their neighbors, the old woman at the edge of the village, the strange man who kept to himself, might be slipping away on this night to conspire with dark forces. And the way you protected your village or your livestock, your family, fire. The bonfires were practical, light and heat on a cold night, but they were also protective. The flames kept the dark at bay. The noise, the shouting, the singing, the banging of pots and pans, the firing of guns in the air scared off witches. The smoke purified the livestock. The sparks carried prayers and fears upward into the sky, where perhaps something was listening. In some parts of Sweden, people would drive their cattle through the smoke to bless them for the coming year. In others, they would burn effigies. These are figures made of straw and old cloth that represented witches who couldn't be caught. In still others, they would place sharp objects, scythes, knives, axes outside their doors because witches were said to be deterred by iron. This was a night of power, of transition, of genuine visceral fear, and it wasn't unique to Sweden. Across the Germanic world, this night was marked with fire. In Germany, it was called Hexennacht, Witches' Night. In Celtic lands, the festival of Beltane fell at the same time, marking the beginning of summer with bonfires and rituals of protection and fertility. In Estonia, in Finland, and in the Czech lands, the same pattern, the same fires, the same fear. All these traditions share a common root, the spring fire festival to protect against supernatural danger, to mark the turning of the seasons, to gather the community at a moment when the world felt fragile and unpredictable. Sweden's version absorbed both pagan fire ritual and eventually the Christian saint's name, and then it was told to behave. Saint Walpurga, or Valpurga, which is the Germanic way to say her name, was born around the year 710 in what is now England, the Kingdom of Wessex to be precise. She was the daughter of a Saxon king, Saint Richard the Pilgrim, and the sister of two other saints. Holiness, it seemed, ran in the family. She became a nun. She studied at Wimborne Abbey in Dorset, one of the great centers of learning in early medieval England. The library there was renowned. The scriptorium produced manuscripts that were copied and circulated across the Christian world. Valpurga was, by all accounts, educated, intelligent, and capable. And then, around the year 748, she was sent to the continent, to what is now Germany, to help her brother Boniface convert the pagan Germanic tribes. This was dangerous work. Missionaries in the 8th century went into forests where the old gods were very much alive. They faced hostility, sometimes violence. Boniface himself would eventually be martyred, killed by a band of armed pagans while reading scripture to a group of converts. Walpurga spent the rest of her life in the German lands. She became an abbess of Heidenheim, a double monastery of men and women, which was unusual for the time. She was known as a healer. She wrote a biography of her brother. She administered the monastery with a quiet competence. She died in and was buried at Heidenheim. And then, about 100 years after her death, something strange happened. Her body was exhumed and moved to Eichstätt in Bavaria. During the transfer, according to legend, her bones began to weep a miraculous oil, a kind of myrrh that was said to have healing properties. Pilgrims came, the sick were brought to her shrine, miracles were reported. She was canonized a saint. Her feast day was set to May 1st, 870, the exact date her relics were to be reinterred at Eichstätt, which meant that the night before her feast day, April 30th, was Walpurgis Night, or Valborgis Night. Now, let's be clear, Saint Valpurga had absolutely nothing to do with bonfires. She had nothing to do with witches. She was an English nun who spent her life in Germany, known for healing and administration, and she probably never set foot in Scandinavia at all. But her name landed on a night that was already ancient, already sacred, already dangerous. And the church, in its wisdom, didn't try to stamp out the pagan fires. It did something much more effective. It gave them a saint's name and absorbed them. Valpurga's reputation as a healer who could counteract disease and witchcraft made her an ideal figure to claim a festival about protection and purification. The pagan fire became the saint's vigil. The witch repelling flames became a celebration of holy healing. That's how it works in Sweden. The old gods don't die, they just get new names. So, what will Valborg look like in Sweden tomorrow night? Let me paint you a picture. It's late afternoon on April 30th. The sun is still up in Östergötland. It won't set until close to 9, some will say 21 here. But the air is crisp. You can see your breath. The sky is pale blue, streaked with high clouds, the kind of sky that promises warmth eventually, but hasn't delivered it yet. In towns and cities across the country, people will make their way to the bonfire site. Some will push strollers, some will walk dogs, some will carry blankets and thermoses, and the quiet, contented look of people who know exactly what comes next. They've done this every year of their lives. Their parents did it, their grandparents did it. The choir will assemble. They'll be wearing winter coats and scarves, maybe student caps that mark a Swedish graduate. They'll sing the traditional songs, songs that every Swede knows, songs that have been sung on this night for generations. The harmonies are close and warm. The words are about winter ending, about light returning, and the beauty of Swedish summer that is still just a promise on the wind. A local dignitary will give a speech, a mayor perhaps, or a church pastor, or a well known community figure. They'll talk about renewal, about light after darkness, about the promise of the coming summer. The words will be simple, they don't need to be profound. The ritual itself is the profundity. And then there will be fire. The fire is the center of everything. It's large, often built by local volunteers in the weeks leading up to the event. A careful pyramid of scrap wood and branches and old pallets, constructed with precision with the people that have been doing these bonfires their whole lives. It will burn for hours. People will stand around it, faces glowing in the orange light, and they'll talk, they'll drink glögg or punch or coffee or whatever they brought in their thermos. They'll watch the sparks rise into the dark. It's not a wild night, not usually. Valborg is more cozy, mysigt. There is a warmth to it. Despite the cold, a communal exhale after the long Scandinavian winter, a quiet joy that doesn't need to be loud. April 30th is also the birthday of King Carl 16th Gustav. So the Swedish flag will be everywhere. It's a double celebration, the king and the fire, the crown and the spring. And Valborg is what they call a de facto half holiday, not a full public holiday, but treated as one by custom. Many businesses close early. The afternoon takes on a festive, anticipatory quality. The evening is given over to the fire, unless you're in a university city like me. For instance, another university town like Uppsala. In Uppsala and Lund, Valborg is a different animal entirely. Uppsala's Valborg is legendary. It starts early, around 9 a.m., with a champagne breakfast. Students gather in parks and apartments, drinking sparkling wine and eating strawberries, and things escalate gently but steadily from there. By midday, the raft race will be underway in the Fierce River. Students build homemade rafts out of plywood and inner tubes and optimism. The rafts are almost always decorated with absurd themes: a giant banana, a Viking longship made of cardboard, a floating sauna that immediately begins to sink. They almost always fall apart halfway down the river, to the delight of the crowd lining the banks. In the afternoon, there's the donning of the caps. That's at the university library. Thousands of students wearing white caps will throw them in the air in unison as the choir sings. It's a rite of passage, a photo they'll keep the rest of their lives, a moment of pure collective joy. And the night? That's the bonfires, the singing, the parties that will stretch until dawn. May 1st is Labor Day, a full public holiday, so there's no pressure to be productive on Friday. Just survive, just to be young, just to be there. A quick footnote: in 2020, during the pandemic, the city of Lund faced a problem. How do you prevent thousands of students from gathering for Valborg when the gathering is the entire point? Their solution was creative. They dumped a ton of chicken manure in the main park where the celebrations usually took place. The smell, they reasoned, would be an effective deterrent, and it worked. There's something very Swedish about that: practical, unromantic, effective. Let me tell you what I think Valborg really is. It's not a pagan ritual anymore, not for most Swedes. It's not a Christian vigil. It's not really a nationalist celebration, despite the flags and the king's birthday. It's something quieter, something harder to name. Swedish winters are long, not just physically, though they are. The darkness in December is real and heavy. The sun rising late and setting early, the world reduced to shades of gray and white and the pale blue of twilight. But spiritually, too, you spend months inside. You spend months in the cold. You spend months waiting, waiting for the snow to melt, waiting for the first green shoots, waiting for the light. And then at the end of April, you gather with your neighbors, you build a fire, or someone else does. You sing, you watch the flames together in the twilight. It's not about witches anymore. It's not about Saint Walpurga. It's about surviving the winter. It's about saying together as a community, we made it. The light is coming back. The summer is ahead. We are still here. In Swedish culture, there's a concept called lagom. It's often translated as not too much, not too little, just right. But that's too simple. Lagom is really about balance, about sufficiency, about knowing when enough is enough and being content with that. Valborg fits perfectly into Lagom life. It's not an extravagant multi-week festival like Carnival in Rio or Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It's one evening, one fire, a few songs, a thermos of something warm. You stand with your neighbors, you watch the flames, you go home. It's enough. It's exactly enough. And that's the point. The celebration doesn't need to be excessive to be meaningful. It just needs to be shared. This is true of so many Swedish celebrations. Midsummer in June, the maypole, the herring, the schnapps, and the dancing. Lucia in December, the procession of light in the darkest time of the year. These aren't grand, ostentatious affairs. They're quiet, they're rhythmic. They mark the turning of the year. They're the heartbeat of the Swedish calendar, and Valborg is the first heartbeat after a long winter silence. For over 1,000 years, people have gathered on this night to light fires. The reasons have changed. First, it was protection from witches. Then it was a saint's vigil. Now it's a secular spring festival. The theology fell away. The fear faded. What remained was the fire, the gathering, the quiet joy of watching the flames with your community. You are part of something old when you stand at the Valborg bonfire, something that doesn't need a name, something that predates kings and constitutions and even the Swedish language itself, something that speaks to a deeper need, the need to mark the seasons, to gather, to say, out loud and together that the darkness has passed and the light is returning. I've been thinking about what it means to really know a country, not the postcard version, not the tourist version, not the version you get from a guidebook or a museum or a well curated Instagram feed, the real version, the one that lives in the bones of the people, the one that whispers through traditions like this. Sweden can seem like a quiet place, a reserved place, a country where people keep to themselves, where small talk is an art form practiced sparingly, where the volume is always just a little lower than you expect. But underneath that reserve is something deep, something ancient, something that has survived centuries of change, war, plagues, the rise and fall of empires, the slow transformation from a poor agrarian kingdom to a modern secular state. And every year, on the last night of April, that something rises to the surface. The fires are lit, the choirs sing, the people gather, not because they have to, not because the church tells them to, not because anyone is forcing them, but because it matters. That's the Sweden I'm trying to understand. The one beneath the surface, the one that can't be photographed or summarized or reduced to a slogan, the one that burns fires on spring nights and sings songs that have been sung for generations and stands together in the cold and watches the sparks rise into the dark. That's the Sweden worth knowing. So, tomorrow evening, if you're in Sweden, I hope you find a fire. I hope you stand in the cold with your neighbors and watch the flames climb. I hope you hear the choir and feel the long winter finally letting go. And I hope that knowing what you know now about the witches and the saint and the thousands of years of fires that came before, the flames feel a little warmer, a little deeper, and a little more like home. And if you're listening from somewhere else in the world, maybe somewhere without bonfires and spring songs and the particular ache of a Scandinavian winter, I hope you find your own way to mark the turning of the season. Step outside, look at the sky, remember that the light always comes back. This has been a bonus episode of Beyond the Swedish Postcard. Our regular schedule continues this Sunday with episode 14 about Saint Birgitta of Sweden, mystic, mother, law speaker for God, the woman who helped create the Swedish language and looked at popes and kings and told them they were failing. That's this Sunday. Until then, Glad Valborg, and keep looking beyond the Swedish postcard.